podcast, A Penny for Your Thoughts with me, Steve Penny. Over the coming weeks, I'm going to be talking to some great people. I hope you enjoy listening in. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say thanks very much, Tom, for taking the time to come in and talk to me today. I'm really looking forward to delving a bit deeper into my knowledge about you, finding out how you've got to where you've got to and what motivates you. So if you wouldn't mind starting off with a quick introduction of who you are and what you're currently doing, and then we'll dig into the questions and see where we go.
Okay, no, thank you for having me first. I'm quite excited about this. Yeah, so my name's Tom Chatterton. I'm a quantity surveyor by trade, if you want to call it a trade. For the last 18 years, I think, 2006 is when I started in the UK. Moved over here 12 years ago and carried it on. So as a QS for Ride Level Bucknell, moved up to director as of last year, which was the ultimate goal, I think, and very much enjoying it. I've been very much involved in a digital perspective of things, as well as in a health team for project specific, so digital enhancements for quantity surveying generally in our business globally, and more locally, specifically around health projects is my experience.
And family name?
Yeah, I got a wife and 3 children, 2 twin girls and a 6-month-old boy. Wow. Twins being 7.
Keeps you busy.
Energy. they're energetic.
Yes.
Anyone who's met them?
I've got 3 myself, but they were basically 2 years apart. So I've got a 25-year-old, a 23-year-old, and a 21-year-old now.
Oh, yeah.
So they're at the other end of the scale.
Yeah.
But yes, certainly when they were young, they were time-consuming.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, they're definitely there.
Why did you start as a QS? What got you into that particular arena?
Well, we, as an aside, we ask this question of any aspiring QSs as well in interviews. Okay. And we say, why do you want to be a QS? Because anyone who says, I always want to be a QS, is a liar, and you never should hire them. you fall into it in some way. And my story on it was, I think my dad was starting to get worried about what I was going to do with my life. And I was saying stuff like, I might go to uni, I might do something like business studies, and he could see how generic it was and wasn't. Yeah. It's like, you should really have a think about what you actually want to do. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, I want to be like my mate James's dad, a guy called John Barrett, who's a developer in the UK, and he was crazy wealthy, and that was what was appealing to me. And he'd have his Aston Martins, and we'd go out in his Porsches and all this kind of stuff, and it was like this fancy lifestyle they had, and I was like, I want to be like John. Yeah. And my dad went, you don't just become a developer, like that's not how it works. And he had another friend called Dudley, and he said, you should go and, like, he was a quantity surveyor before becoming a developer, so why don't you look at something like that? Yeah. And my stepmom wanting me, I think, out of the house, was like, I found an advert for a trainee quantity surveyor in the paper, and said, well, here's this, and I interviewed for it, and it was 22 candidates, and I was down to the last 2 with a good friend of mine called Adam Green, who he ultimately got the job, and they said, right, we can't pick you, so we're going to let your A-levels decide, and whoever gets the best A-levels is going to be picked. But Richard Goodenough, he was the MD at the time, he said, well, I really like you, please keep in touch. So I took that literally, and I went off and did a construction management course at university, and I worked for them in the holidays, summer jobs, and all that. And he got me in touch with other contractors and things. I worked for them, and then at the end of my university, he said, "Come work for me. I'll put you through a QS degree," and I did that. And I'm here, and I never became a developer. I quite enjoy being a quantity surveyor.
Yeah, my journey was kind of my dad rather than my mum wanting me to get off my arse and get a job. Yeah, basically. Yeah. You can't carry on sponging off me. You're 16. Go out and get a job.
Exactly. They're good like that.
And I thought, I had no idea what I wanted to do at that age, to be honest. My dad got me into this work. He was working for a company that did a lot of design and build stuff, and they wanted a junior in the office. So went and did that. Stayed there for 4 years, and then moved around and ended up here. So,
nice.
So,
and how long have you been here?
Sorry?
How long have you been here?
In New Zealand since 2010.
Oh, yeah, similar to me. But I was a bit, 2011.
In Christchurch, I think came down in 2013.
Yeah, I met you. You were NDY, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not allowed to mention
Not
other
done
names. Yeah.
That's their name.
No, sorry.
Yes. I was there for about 3.5 years, I think, and then ACOM for about 3.5, 4 years, and Honoris now for 5-6 years this year.
It's gone quick, isn't it?
It's way too quick. It's scary. Scary how quick the time flies by, actually, when you start to look back. Now, I've got a milestone coming up in August this year for myself. I started work in August of 1984. So this year I've been working for 40 years.
You got to celebrate somehow. Special podcast.
What I want to do is stop. That's what I want to do.
The ultimate.
But I can't. Too much to do. Too much to do. Definitely. So, do you think that you've had any significant challenges in your career?
Challenges. I've been very lucky with challenges, I think. I mean, there's always people you come across. I won't name them, but like back in the UK, there was people and they're very difficult and they almost jealous and things like that. And I think I learned, with sort of more personal challenges, that I got quite robust with criticism and feeling anxious. I settled myself as an adult quite early on, so I feel quite strong in the sense of if I'm getting feedback or anything, I welcome it, and I don't feel too bad. So, and I've been lucky to have a trajectory that never feels like it's falling away. That might change now that when you get to the top, what happens after that, right? There's only one way. Yeah, exactly. So, fall off a cliff at some point. But
yes,
I've been lucky to date. I definitely, as I say, I've had a foundation that has definitely helped there in good and bad.
Yeah, I think the best way to look at your career is learn from all of the experiences you have.
Absolutely.
I'd certainly say that I've learned a lot about how not to do things for people I've worked with, and how not to treat people as well. Those are the lessons I think that really have an impact. If you can see how somebody else is doing things, whether it's good or bad, and either emulate it or make sure you never do it, depending on which it is, I think it's a good way to learn from those experiences, personally.
I think I also don't take things too seriously. I quite enjoy a laugh, and I take that into a project, and I'm making jokes at my own expense, other people's expense, for not being mean or anything, but
I think that's an English thing.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
I don't think English people generally take themselves very seriously.
That's a nice trait, I think.
I think so. Yeah. That coupled with the heavy sarcasm confuse people sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Some people can't read it at all, and they're going, "Are you being serious?" I'm like, absolutely not. I've never been serious in my life.
Don't know how to. Yeah. So, if you're looking back over your career today, have you got anything in particular you would say that was your proudest achievement, or something you look back on and reflect and say, "I learned a lot from that process"?
Yeah, probably. Personally, there was a point there at university, and I was like, I want to do all these things. I didn't have any money to do anything, and I found that I wanted to sort of just do lots, and so I said yes to lots of things, and I got asked, just recently. I just got asked to be on a podcast, and so a lot of people wouldn't say yes to things, and so when it comes to the career side, when I came to New Zealand, we have this software in-house called Ross 5D. It's like an estimating tool. We develop it inside from our Melbourne office. Right. And they said, "Do you want to be our Ross 5D champion?" Some people will go, "Oh, no, that's not for me." But I thought, okay, I did it. Wow. That then moved into a BIM area, because natural evolution of taking off from 2D electronically goes into BIM. Then I started getting into sort of that BIM piece. Then it got further afield into digital advancement, and now I'm like looking at all the AI side of things, and that triggered a bunch of stuff saying, "Oh, this guy's really enthusiastic, really willing to push the boundaries of what they know." And I've been lucky enough to be put forward for literal awards, and you've been at the Property Council Awards. I got that Property Council Award. I won a essay competition for the Pacific Association of Quantity Surveyors that got me a free holiday to Malaysia. It was amazing. And so I've been very lucky. I think that luck is stemmed from saying yes to stuff and enthusiasm to it. But I've been very lucky to literally be awarded with some stuff.
Yeah.
It's been
one
very
thing
proud.
I'd say is when I'm talking to graduates, whenever I'm talking to graduates, I always say to them, don't think that the first thing you say is going to be no. When somebody offers you an opportunity, even if you can't see how it's going to benefit you, say yes.
Yeah.
Because you just have no idea where it's going to take you.
Exactly. Yeah.
And there's been a few times where I've been offered opportunities, like going to work in the Middle East. It was a big decision because I ended up having to leave my family behind for a while. But if I hadn't done it, I know that in hindsight, I said, why didn't I try?
Yeah.
Because I learned a lot about the work, learned a lot about my capabilities and my resilience as well, because it was a pretty difficult time. But, I think if you take those opportunities and make the most of them, one, you get a reputation for being a doer rather than a no person. And two, you can learn a huge amount about yourself.
Yeah. And you probably wouldn't have come to New Zealand. If you'd said no there, you might not have ever said yes to coming to New Zealand, and you wouldn't have the life that you do, which is, I assume, pretty good.
Yeah, it is about taking those opportunities and making the most of them a lot of the time, I think.
No,
Can I just sort of explore the digital side of things with you? Because it's something that I'm personally really interested in. You're talking about the use of AI in what you do now. So how do you see that influencing the way you do your job?
Well, it depends on how far into the future we're talking about. If AI doesn't change from where we have it right now, it can only enhance what we do. It saves us time, becomes more efficient. The further we go along, there'll be other people that think they can do quantity surveying because they've asked it prompts of AI through common language now, that will give them an answer. And that scares me a little bit. Yeah. So I think that we need to be the keepers of good prompts. I think we need to have the IP on those good prompts as well. And it will inevitably become that the AI models will be able to predict or do a portion of everybody's job, including like doctors. There'll be a point where we take a picture of a mole and we send it into the AI and it says, there's a 6% chance of a melanoma with this. You should do this, this and this. Yep. And you'd go to and I think if I was predicting the future, I'd go to a human doctor after that and say, verify that. Yep. And we'll be, as experts in mechanical, electrical, or quantity surveying cost, we'll be act as a human verification system.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been very aware of as we've digitalised most of what we do is that you're getting to a point where you've got a computer operator rather than an engineer.
Yeah.
And that, like yourself, that worries me because they'll put numbers in and they'll get numbers out and they will have no idea whether the numbers they're getting out are the right numbers.
Correct.
One of the things that my experience has taught me is I can tell when something doesn't look right.
Exactly.
I know what it's going to look like roughly before I press the button. If you don't have that experience and that sort of job knowledge, then when you do see the numbers, you just say, okay, that's right then. I'll carry on. No. And you could be making fundamental errors in calculations.
And it's just like anything of the old garbage in, garbage out. Same with the prompts, same with the inputs that you have to AI. If you don't know the nuanced nature of the business and the scheme and all this, you're going to get the garbage out. So it will become quite important to have that.
I think that, as you say, being the gatekeepers of that knowledge is probably where our role's going to be.
Yeah.
And I do think you're right that AI is going to have more and more influence over how we do everything. Yeah. I mean, I've used it in the past for pulling together a job description when I was looking to put an advert out for somebody, and I used ChatGPT to it. And it, first draft wasn't great, but after a couple of go-throughs, it came out with something that made a lot of sense. And, it was quick. Yeah. If I'd have started from scratch, it'd have probably taken me at least twice as long to do it.
One of my worries is that with the graduate side of things. So if that's what you've got, a graduate level, write me an advert, would you? And they'll do it, and you go, well, it's not great first attempt. It's the same situation, and you go, right, we'll change a few bits. They're learning from that. Yeah. AI's learning from that. What happens in the world where there is no space for a new graduate to come in, and then ultimately that has a problem with anyone leaving a business in terms of succession? Because that's the thing that keeps playing on in my mind. It's like, how is this going to influence new people coming into the business and people exiting the business?
That's the other thing that I kind of glad that I'm getting towards the end of my career because it's not going to be my problem for much longer.
Yeah, there's a few people.
But I mean, the reality is that we've got a situation where people aren't looking for careers anymore. You know, they don't start a job like I did 4 years ago and carry on doing it for 4 years. They might do it for 4 or 5 years.
Yep.
Might do it for 10 years, but then they might completely change what they do. Yep. So we've got to start thinking about how we incorporate that into how we run our businesses. Being a lot more flexible about who we bring in and when we bring them in, so that we can manage our workforce in a different way, because it is changing for sure.
And it might be a workforce of data analysts and computer scientists and some experts in the field that actually makes up the whole team now, as opposed to graduates of the same version of you and up into retirement age.
Yeah, I think it's quite exciting and mildly terrifying.
Yeah. But isn't that fun?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I mean, that if you don't have that sort of little bit of danger about how things are going to change, it kind of gets boring.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know,
could ruffle the feathers of norms.
Yeah. You can fall into a beige world where nothing ever changes.
Exactly.
It's not a good place to be.
I totally agree.
Not very stimulating at all.
No, I totally agree.
Okay. What about lessons learned in your career? Has there been a point in time when you've found out something that's really fundamentally changed the way you look around you and perceive things?
Yeah, and I'll probably go back to some of the points that we're just talking about here with my one of the big fundamental things. I read a book called Yes Man, and they made a rubbish film about it, but there was a book, this guy called Danny Wallace is the author, and he's kind of semi-depressed because he broke up with his girlfriend, and he goes down the pub with his friend who makes a bet with him, who says, I'll give you, it was like 20 quid, if you say yes to every opportunity that comes your way for the next 6 months. Right. And he takes this literally, and he very much gets involved. He writes a book about it, so he knows what he's doing. But the guy says yes to everything. And like if someone asked him to join the UFO sort of society, he joins it, and the flat earthers, yeah. All these things, but he meets all these crazy people. He gets really involved in it, and it changes the way he is perceived by the external world. So he works for the BBC at the time, and they're like, "Who's this guy who just says yes to everything?" And he ends up getting higher up the food chain. He does some like live shows. It makes him sort of famous off the back of this, and it was all because of a bet. But I saw a version of like, well, if that opportunity comes, that you take it, and also like to the point where I was saying, if life wasn't a bit scary, a bit out of your comfort zone, it would be pretty boring, and that's what
that's what drives you.
That's why I'm here sat in a podcast when others would be like, oh, that's not for me. And
they're quite surprised the number of people have said they don't want to do this, actually, because it does seem quite
intimidating,
maybe outside of their comfort zone.
What's the worst that happened? I'll sound like an idiot. I mean, I can live with that. So
hardly anybody's listening. So.
My mum will listen.
So only when it goes viral, we've got a problem.
We've got to say something quite controversial for that. We'll think.
I mean, I've had a few people who've I've sent them the audio after we finished it, and they've said, "Can you take that bit out, please?" Right. Because I was a little bit too honest. Which is, I think it's great that given the opportunity, and surprisingly, the people that said that were closely associated with the legal profession.
Oh yeah, boring types. Yeah,
obviously. But there you go. It's all good. It's all good. So
saying yes to things is that answer. That's changed my perspective. That's how I've ended up here. That's how I've ended up doing anything.
I think it's a good way to live your life within reason.
Yeah, you don't want to accidentally join the flat earthers and No. But he met his wife. He met his future wife doing this thing because she said, "Oh, why don't you come to Australia?" And he went, okay, that was an opportunity that presented itself. So he said yes. And he goes through all the trials and tribulations of saying yes to everything, which is hilarious. But
there'll be some things you wish you hadn't said yes to. I'm sure. Okay, what about influences in your life?
Obviously, family and friends, all the normal answers. But I would say professionally, there's probably 3 big influences. So there would be, my dad had an amazing work ethic and travelled all over the world with his job. selling safety stuff. It makes it sound like an arms dealer, but it was more like steel toe cap shoes and stuff. But seeing that, and like he really enjoyed his job, and he's just written his memoirs actually, and it's like hearing some of the stories that he got into in the Lebanese war broke out when he was there, and in the 70s, and had to be extracted by the US, and he was at gunpoint in Africa, and all this kind of stuff. It was really like I was romanced by the idea of maybe the travelling side and the work. That this was a fun working world. So I want to make a world for that myself. So Dad's obviously number one, and then two bosses I would say from influences. So I've got Richard Goodenough, who was the managing director of the first place I worked, Goodrich, and he was like an expert marketer, and he just allowed me to go and meet people, even though I was pretty junior, and he taught me it's one trick. He taught me lots of things, but one trick that I still use today is if anyone says their birthday in front of you, you write it down, you put it in your calendar, and then you send them a little happy birthday. I do that to him still, which is in June actually, and I always say happy birthday, and he goes, "Oh, you never forget." I'm like, "This is the trick you taught me."
And I did get that from, because I do the same. If I hear something about somebody that, whether it's their birthday or some other significant piece of information, I make a note of it. And I've had Rob Uchel, used to be at UC. He keeps, every time I send him a note saying happy birthday, he says, "How do you know when my birthday is?"
Because you once mentioned it, and I kept a note.
I think it was when I first started the business. I was on campus quite a lot. And there was a birthday cake for him, and I just remembered the date and wrote it down. And then the next year sent him a happy birthday.
Well, a nice little thing, and I'm not. It's not. And I called it a trick, but it's not. Like, you would do genuinely care about these people you do, and showing that little bit of interest in a piece of their life is wonderful.
It's that sort of engagement, and being sort of considerate of other people that people remember.
Exactly.
Everything else.
And every time there's a birthday at work, it's written on the board before they sort of get in and happy birthday and all that kind of thing. And it's just people. It's nice. People care. Yeah, being human. So Richard definitely big influence in that marketing side. And then Malcolm Timms, who people on this who listen to this podcast probably know, who's managing director of Ryder Love Christchurch, and he delivers. And it goes. He's Brit as well. So back to your point of all Brits have got great sense of humour. Well,
that's what us Brits think.
Exactly. Yeah, we might be biased. He has this approach to actual projects where he is brutally tight on the design team and making the most cost-effective job he can as a quantity surveyor, and but he delivers it with humour and a way that people seem to just like him for it. And what a great skill to have. By the way, your facade's going down to the ugliest, cheapest thing, and people are like, "Oh, thank you," and laughing at his jokes along the way. What a great skill.
That is a great skill. Yeah.
And I've tried to take some of it. I'm not a master like he is at it, but I've definitely tried to adopt some of that approach, and I bring that to some of the projects.
I think there is a way of dealing with people professionally and treating them with respect, I think, which is really important.
Definitely.
And if you don't do that, it makes all the relationships that much harder, doesn't it? And you feel like you go into a room with that person and you know it's going to be a confrontation. You're not really enjoying that, and
exactly
end up being a lot worse because of it.
And in that point, so he would go and sit next to a contractor or someone that he thinks might be, and it would upfront the point before it would even become a thing, and everyone's laughing, and it's a nice way of dealing with people.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
That's a very good idea. Okay, so outside of work for a little while now, what do you do if you want to have a rest and relax? What's your go-to?
Well, with the 3 children, it's rest and relax is kind of it's not really on the table. But and to be honest, I'm not much one for sitting around anyway. I enjoy the thing that would, if I had all the time in the world to relax or do what I want, I would go and do adventures. I would be trying to climb a mountain or mountain biking some trail or something like that. That's my idea of relaxing. Even though it's physically hard. and so for this weekend, we've got a long weekend coming up.
Yep.
And the girls have been saying they want to go on wild camping, which in their mind means camping without a campsite. But they want to ride there. And I said, well, we're in May. I don't want to do that. But how about this? And I'm going to ride from our house to a point on the Little River Rail Trail. Okay. I'm going to meet them there. My wife's going to drop them, the twins, with their bikes. Yeah. I'm going to ride to Little River with them halfway.
Oh, nice.
And we're going to stay at the silos there. Yeah. And that's like it's my idea of a good time, relaxing, recharging, even though it's physically demanding.
Yeah. Just gives you a chance to.
I know, you get a lot more time in your head, which is nice.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that I've found with running my own business is I need to do something, otherwise I'm working.
Yeah.
Because if I just sit down, I'm just thinking about what I need to be doing and who I need to be talking to and all of those other things you do when you're running a business.
Yeah.
So, being active is important in order to get out of my head and start doing other things.
Yep.
So I think you're right. It's having that other thing that you do that's not work is really important for me. I mean, one of the things that I really have enjoyed over the past few years in particular has been getting back into the football back home.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Because I really miss that sort of camaraderie you get from going to football matches.
Yeah.
Which
it is second to none, those Premiership matches or top level football. The crowd, right?
Yeah, the crowd, the banter and everything else is amazing. And it's difficult because of the time difference. Yeah. But 3 a.m. quite regularly at the moment. Not anymore. The season's over. But that having that sort of connection to that thing again is something I get a lot of energy from, even if we don't win anything.
Well, which team is it?
Arsenal.
Ah, yes. Well, it's been a few years.
Been a few years, but I think when you got the Man 115 City in charge in top of the league, with all of that money and influence that they've got, you don't really stand a chance.
My dad's a Sheffield United fan, so it could be worse.
So is Chris.
Yeah, I didn't want to mention that. He might listen to this. So I think they've broken some records this year, haven't they? Not good ones.
Yeah, not good ones.
Yeah, not good ones.
I think they have the worst Premier League record ever, which is quite impressive because there's been some really bad teams.
Not good.
But never mind. I haven't mentioned that to Chris. Maybe I will next time.
Maybe time to convert to Sheffield Wednesday.
No. They're still in the Championship, aren't they?
Or League One.
One of the two. Yeah, they've gone down a bit. What about advice to your younger self? If you could go back to your old self, is there anything that you want to say?
Depends how young, but buy Bitcoin.
Buy lots of
Bitcoin. and sell Bitcoin. Don't lose your password. On that though, there was a time, and it must have been about 2010. Someone would be able to look up the timeline of the price of Bitcoin. I remember reading an article. I'd obviously had an interest in the digital things back then, and I remember reading an article that said a guy had lost his wallet, his digital wallet, and he bought the Bitcoin at like $20, and it was now $250 for a Bitcoin. And I'm thinking, oh god, this guy's had a terrible time to date now when they're $70,000.
They peaked at $120,000.
Was it? Oh man, imagine that.
$120,000 a coin.
And I remember thinking, should I buy 5 Bitcoins for $250? And I thought, nah, they're probably at the height. And I remember doing that after reading that article, and I chose not to. So there's one piece of advice.
Buy Bitcoin. Hold on to it, but not forever.
Yeah, exactly. But I think I probably took things quite seriously in the early days of the career, and I don't think I would suggest being like that. There was times where I thought, no, my career is very important, and it ultimately has been. Yeah. And you've got to do things like this, you've got to do it that way, and you've got to make sacrifices in other areas of your life. And I don't think that's true. And I think you can actually join the career a bit later than, because I did it when I was 20 or whatever, after the uni. So really from 18, if you include the university sort of journey as well.
Yeah.
And I'd had an opportunity from a guy who said, do you want to paint boats at sea? And I was like, travel the world just on these massive container ships, painting them let's see. And I said, oh, no, my career's just started. And I was like, I could have started that a couple of years later, and it would have done nothing, and I would have seen the world. And it probably goes back to the yes man thing. After reading that, changed my perspective a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's what I would say. Like, don't take
the
it.
opportunity I got early on in my career was somebody that I was. I don't know how I met them. I can't remember how I met this person, but they were a pension advisor person, and he worked in the financial markets. And he kept phoning me up about every 2 or 3 months and trying to get me to come and work for him. Yeah. And I never did it because it just didn't feel right.
Yeah.
And it was a full commission pay. So
there was
no salary.
So it was all on you.
So it's all on you to make sure and I just kind of felt, I don't look back on that and regret not doing it. Yeah. Because it just felt like too big a risk.
Yeah. And that's what like all of this saying yes to everything, you do have to weigh up. There's the boundaries, right, of your risk profile that you are willing to take, and you're probably very right to have done what you did.
Well, I wouldn't be here if I hadn't.
You'd have been retired.
And I met her through work, so.
Oh, nice. I didn't know. She's an engineer as well, isn't she?
Pardon?
She's an engineer as well,
She's
isn't
a drafty.
Cool.
Currently working with Becca's.
Oh, cool.
It's a radio podcast. Okay, what about reading? You said you read that book, obviously, about the Yes Man. And,
I mentioned that a lot.
Yep.
I do enjoy a book. I've enjoyed, actually, audiobooks too recently. Right. That's been really good when you can drive and listen and stuff like that. But recently just finished Prisoners of Geography. Have you heard about that? Tim Marshall, a British author, and he. So I like books. I'm a non-fiction fan generally. Right. I've read fiction books, but like non-fiction is my go-to, I'd say. Yeah. And anything that talks about places that I've never been, or I can learn about a place, and I do enjoy travelling, and so I can envisage these places, even if it's good or bad stories. So, Prisoners of Geography is a sort of narration on geopolitics today, or a couple of years ago when it was written, but how human interference in like geography by creating a line across a map is actually not the right way to create countries and the boundaries of society. So he goes into saying, like, the reason why India and China have never had an argument is massive Himalayas in the way. Yeah. And, they have had arguments. They've just never gone into conflict.
Because it's a long way round.
Exactly. A long way round, long way over. Yeah. Everything is difficult. Yeah. So they use Nepal as their pawn. But
they take that from different sides. Yeah.
And it goes into the Russia thing, and it explains how, like, Ukraine and... like there's the warm water ports is ultimately what Russia is after, because they to be a global power you need warm water ports which work all year round, and Ukraine's one of the barriers to that. And it's really fascinating. So that's what I've recently read, so I enjoy that kind of book. But my all-time favourite book is called, and it always looks bad if you read it on the tube or something, it's called Emergency Sex and Other Desperate Measures. And it's a triple author. Okay. Yeah. Bear with me.
Need a bit of explanation.
Yeah. It's a triple author, and it's about 3 workers from the UN, and they meet in Cambodia. One's at the Red Cross at the time, Kiwi guy. He was a doctor, and a lawyer, and an administration person of the UN. And they meet in Cambodia in the 90s, and they have this rose-tinted idea of the UN is fixing the world one piece at a time, after the various atrocities of the 90s. Anyway, that slowly disappears, and they go across the world. They get split up, but at the end of this, they write this book together. Right. And it's fascinating. It's really fascinating. One, about the horrible things that happened during the 90s in these locations, but the title is called that because the female author, again, non-fiction, the female author was in Somalia, and they were being raided. Their UN base was being raided. She genuinely thought she was going to die. Right. And she has emergency sex because that was the only thing they could do to wait it out. But she didn't die. They managed to.
So did she regret the emergency sex?
Well, I mean, she talked about it in a book, so
probably not then.
Yeah. don't know. This has probably made us some money now.
Yeah, it probably has.
Yeah.
Certainly a catchy title.
Yeah, and that's it. Yeah, it's a hook, right? But that's one of my favourite books. It's really fascinating on what happened
I think those
in that
human
period.
stories are actually a good way to learn about the world around you.
Yeah.
I think we sort of run the risk being in New Zealand that we're far away from everything.
Yeah.
And you sometimes forget what's going on elsewhere.
Yeah.
And having that connection to what's going on and how the world is the way it is kind of a good thing to do.
Yep.
One of the things that I'm very keen to do more of is exploring more of the ancient sites in the world.
Oh, nice.
Because
that'd be great.
It just fascinates me that you've got civilisations that are 10, 15,000 years old that we know very little about, but were incredibly advanced.
Yeah.
There's a place in northern Turkey called Göbekli Tepe, I think it is.
Yeah.
Göbekli Tepe. And they think it's the oldest civilisation they've currently found on the planet. It's about somewhere between 10 and 15,000 years ago. And it's showing the early stages of arable farming and other things that they've previously thought were much more recent. And they're kind of thinking that this might be basically the birthplace of civilization, that they think this is where everything came from.
Yeah.
And just like that idea that there was one location on Earth where, for some reason,
The first human.
people suddenly came up with these ideas. What caused that? Where did it come from? And just understanding a little bit more about where we came from really fascinates me.
Yeah, there's another good book actually that I read called I think it's called like Seven Daughters of Eve, and it sounds almost biblical, but it's not. It's nothing to do with religion. It's very scientific, and it's and they talk about like these 7 locations of early human life, and because there's a type of chromosome or something that comes down the female line, the maternal line, so you can trace back all the way back to human history of sorts, and it sort of tells a story of what must have happened, like to get into a sort of a significant enough issue for them to then create farming. So if the abundance of food started disappearing, they had to do something about creating farming, and it goes into that in this location, and then how that changes another location. And it's quite a fascinating book. Not as good as Emergency Sex, but yeah.
Nothing is as good as Emergency Sex.
I might have to cut this out if my dad's listening.
Another thing just to think about, if you had the opportunity to meet with a person, have dinner with them, have a conversation with them, or even more than one person if you like, who would you want to catch up with?
Dead or alive?
Dead or alive? Real or fictional?
Oh, God, real or fictional? Oh, that makes it very hard. I tell you what, one thing, I did get to meet one hero once, and so I don't really rate myself for not getting starstruck because of I've got form, where I was lucky enough to meet the Foo Fighters, and I met Dave Grohl, and when Taylor Hawkins was still alive, and met the whole Foo Fighters, and it was cool, but man, I fell apart. Like, my wife, cool as a cucumber, chatting away, Taylor Hawkins there, chatting to Dave Grohl, and I went up to Dave and I said, how are you liking Christchurch? And he tells me a big story about how he went for a bike ride and the people he got recognised in New Brighton, and he had a ride home, and his bouncer or his security couldn't keep up, and all this kind of thing. And I just go, yeah. How do you like Christchurch? He went, you already asked me that, man. And I had to walk away. I walked over to Pat Smear, who's the other Nirvana musician in Foo Fighters, and talked to him, who I could handle. Whereas Dave Grohl was too much. He just stood there quietly while we ignored him. So I don't rate myself if I do get to meet someone fictional or famous. But if I had to pick someone, I have a fascination with like the 60s London, and that I think in my head that it was the ultimate era to be alive and be part of.
White bloke, probably.
Yeah, well, yeah, so
not so much.
No, true. It does. There is context that does need to be stipulated here. Yeah. And like, I was always really into like the Cray movies, and I'd love to just sit down with the Cray twins or something and say, "What were you doing?"
I have a story about them.
Oh, go on.
My mum, God rest her, passed away earlier this year. She was born in Finsbury Park in North London. And she lived there until she got married to my dad. And when she was a youngster, like in her late teens, she used to go out drinking regularly in that area.
Yeah.
And there was a bar called the Blind Beggar that she used to go into, which is where the Crays used to go. And she went there for a party, which was described as a coming out party. And she thought it was somebody turning 21. But no, it was somebody coming out and Nick.
Oh. One of
the Crays had thrown him a party.
Yeah.
So obviously taking the hit for somebody in the crew.
And she met the Crays at this party?
Not only sort of at a distance, not sort of on first name terms.
Wow.
But she was in that area when they were there.
Yeah. I just
they
think...
were kind of known around the area very well.
Yeah. They're the kings of the city. Kings of the city. They had those clubs. and
they didn't... They were respected by the non-criminal fraternity because they never did anything to the non-criminal fraternity.
Yeah.
Unless you were a policeman.
Yeah.
Not so good with the cops.
No.
But if you're a member of the public, very rarely got into trouble with them. So.
Yeah. They probably looked after some of the their local community because they were quite family oriented, weren't they? From from what I've seen,
very psychedelic.
Yeah. Well, I think it was it Reggie or Ronnie? Well, Ronnie was the absolute crazy one. But I'd love to just hear their stories firsthand, right? And I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of shows something on me, but I'm not interested in the criminal nature. Just the stories of what they had to say in an era that fascinates me.
Their lives are something to behold, I would say.
Yeah, they'll go down in history. Kind of.
Anybody else? Or are we just going to stick
with gangsters?
Why not?
I don't know.
That'd be interesting then.
Yeah, it's a hard one. There's probably many people I'd like to sit down and have a chat with, but I can't think of anyone off the top of my head other than Crays and Dave Grohl. Second attempt, actually. Yeah. Want to try again?
Let me have a drink first.
yeah. Something calm me down. Yeah.
On that subject of music, is there a concert or a performance you've never seen that you really wish you had? Or one that you highly recommend going to, that you've been to?
Well, me and my wife have been to quite a few and really enjoy it. And I'll tell you what, Christchurch is a great place to do it because you get very close to any major star that comes. Yeah. And, it'll carry on. Now we're getting a new stadium. And we've had some great gigs. Some not so great ones. I even if I'm not really into the music, but if there's a legend who comes to the town, we'll go and see it. Although when the Boss came, I didn't go to see that, and I went for a run that evening, and it was a warm evening. I don't know if you went to it, and Bruce Springsteen, and
I like his music. But I didn't go.
And I went for a run up on the hills that evening, and it was a warm evening, and the music carried to the hills. And I told my wife I'm going for 5K, which means I'll be back half an hour, and I heard everything, and I was like, man, I just sat down and watched this or listened to this gig, and I came home, and my phone had run out of battery, and I came home, and she was
about to sing out search bar.
Where the f have you been? And she was furious with me, but so we've been lucky enough to go to lots of them. But I think I would. She really wants to go see Ben Howard, who's a folk singer, one of her favourite artists. So I'd like to take her to go see that. Yeah. And equally, the twins, they love Taylor Swift, right? And nothing doesn't do it for me, but I would love to see their faces at a massive concert like that and enjoy them enjoying a concert. One we had only January last year. It was such the perfect gig. Was at the current stadium, the temporary stadium, Orange Theory or whatever it's called. Whatever it's called. Yeah, whatever it's now. And we saw 660, the Kiwi band.
Yeah.
What a great gig. They had you didn't realise I knew so many songs, and it was a hot evening, and it was just very pleasant. We went with a couple of friends, and we just had a great time. Babysitters there.
We went to see Tom Jones recently.
Oh, yeah.
That was impressive.
Yeah.
He's 86, I think.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Still picking up the ladies. Yeah, I'm sure.
Probably. He's still married, actually. I think his wife's still alive.
Yeah.
But the thing that was amazing about him is you could see when he walked on stage that he was old.
Yeah.
And the way he walked, the way he carried himself, he was an old man.
Yeah.
But as soon as he started singing, just amazing.
Well, that's what you want, right? You want that sound.
Absolutely. I mean, we've heard heard stories about Madonna and others that they just can't sing anymore.
Bob Dylan. We went to see Bob Dylan. I thought we were getting 60s Dylan. We thought we were getting all these songs. He sounded very different, and it was kind of disappointing. And he didn't interact with the crowd, and it was just it was not a great gig.
My wife and I, we went to see Wet, 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 Wet for our singles back in the UK. It's the only time I've ever walked out of the concert.
Oh, really?
Because they were so bad.
Yeah, that's not
just very disappointing. Just didn't really have, like you say, no interaction with the crowd. Just singing the songs really flat and no energy. Just like, we can't stand this, we're leaving.
There was it reminded me, not because it was bad, but it was the opposite. It was so much better than we were expecting. There's a guy called Sixto Rodriguez, and it was a documentary called Searching for the Sugar Man that won an Oscar for best documentary or whatever. And it's a story of apartheid in South Africa, where they had not. They were a big fan of Sixto Rodriguez, but because of apartheid, they didn't get any new information about him. And so he stayed in the radio cycle of music for years and years. The rest of the world forgot about him and didn't care about him. And then when apartheid was lifted, they were like, well, we heard he died and he had this horrible death and all this, and they went looking for him. Turned out he was alive, and he was like, sorry, what? And he was just like a tradie, and he would sort of compare to a Bob Dylan type style music, and so he started touring again, and we went to see him in Auckland, and the guy was exactly how he sounded from 60s 70s version of him. And God, it was good. He's died, unfortunately, like a couple of years now, but he was
revived his career
briefly, and it was, so he had a great ending, but it was truly a great gig. We weren't really knowing what to expect for a guy that hadn't really been touring for 30 years, 40 years, and he was excellent. He sounded just like it.
I think the one concert that I went to that I'll never forget was, I was really lucky to get to see Queen.
Oh, wow.
And I saw the Live Magic tour in Nebworth Park.
Chris Perrins would be jealous of that. That's his favourite. Yeah.
250,000+ people at that concert.
Wow.
It was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that's just, if I could pick a gig, it'd probably be sort of Live Aid or something. But seeing Freddie in full noise would be amazing.
They flew into the concert on a helicopter. Like the Magic tour on side of the helicopter. It was supported by Big Country and Status Quo. So it's really dated now.
Yeah, but Status Quo. Yeah. My mum's favourite.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
But when he came on stage, just the whole crowd was just totally in his control.
Yeah, greatest frontman ever, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You see what he did at the Live Aid concert. If you watch the film, it's how he controlled the crowd at that concert. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I just don't think we've ever seen his like since. To be honest.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Him and Elvis are probably at a similar level, but I think Freddie's personality was probably the best.
Second to none. I totally agree. He'd be the greatest frontman of all time, I think. And I would love to have seen Queen. I'd like to revise my answer to Queen.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that if you do see it, you'll never forget it.
Yeah,
I've seen Dire Straits; they were good, but nothing compared.
I think something like Guns N' Roses in their heyday would be good. Axl Rose, Full Noise. He had incredible range.
Yeah.
Not probably Freddie Mercury range, but still amazing and a bit heavier. But that would have been quite cool as well.
Yeah, I don't mind a bit of rock music myself.
Yeah, some of the classic rocks are cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Well, you said you like to travel. Where's your favourite place that you've been to so far, and where do you really want to go to?
Well, favourite. I've been lucky to go to lots of places. I really enjoy Asian countries. Okay. First Asian country I ever went to South Korea, and that was my first sort of culture shock into sort of some of the Asian cuisine and interesting culture. And we got like really welcomed into this family they did this ceremony called Chuseok, and it was like they likened it to like an American Thanksgiving kind of, and a big family meal stuff like that. We're eating stuff. I still don't know to this day what it was, and it was delicious, and it was all very culturally.
You don't know what it is.
Well, maybe. And I on my first date with my wife, I told the story I'd been to Korea, And I said, well, I accidentally ate dog. And she goes, I'll stop you there. I'm a vegetarian. And I was like, oh, there's not going to be a second date. But no, luckily she saw past that. And I did. There was all sorts of stuff eaten at that one. And then I've been various places in Asia, and we had our honeymoon in Vietnam, and that was amazing, especially as a QS. It was so cheap. I tell this story all the time, but I managed to, with the equivalent of $2 New Zealand dollars, I had 8 beers and came out with change.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like
it was like heaven.
In the UK in the 80s.
Yeah, exactly.
I ran the drinks for a fiver.
Yeah. It was cool. We travelled from place to place on sleeper trains, and we had a great time. But if I somewhere to go that I haven't been, the twins have got a little friend. I think her name's Emily from school, and she's got an Indian heritage. She's Kiwi, but Indian heritage, and she obviously romances the twins with these stories of Indian food. And so the girls come back saying, "Oh, I want Indian food," and we do that, and they're like, "Oh, when can we go to India? When can we go to India?" So I'd love to. I don't know, maybe go like somewhere like Goa and take the trains up all the way to like the Himalayas, and see those mountains.
Yeah.
With the girls, and obviously Elliot can come as well, the baby. But their want, it makes me want to go there with them. I've never been. Yeah, the classics. You know, I'm all for a cliche.
One piece of advice I'd give you: if you do go to India, well, there's 2 pieces of advice. One, don't have ice in anything.
yeah, the dirty ice.
Definitely do not have ice in anything. And 2, don't drive yourself.
Oh yeah. Well,
it's terrifying.
Have you been? So you've been? Yeah. Where did you go?
Into Delhi.
Oh, nice. Well, busy.
It was truly terrifying being in a car in Delhi, to be honest. You have a 2-lane road, and there'd be 3 or 4 lanes of traffic on each lane.
Yeah.
And you get to a junction, you want to turn right across the oncoming traffic. What do? Do you stop and wait for a gap? No. They'll
stop.
They will stop.
Or they won't.
Or they won't. Yeah. One way or the other.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll be moving somewhere.
So the car will just turn, when you turn the indicator, just turn and go.
Wow.
And just hope that people stop for them.
That's an exciting trip. Well, we've just, me and a guy called James Riddick, who is a partner at Green and Roach Lawyers, I don't know if you know him. Yeah. He and I, in the pub one day, we were talking about trips that we'd done and life before children, the good old days before kids.
I remember those days.
Yeah. And he was...
They come back, by the way.
I'm sure. I hope. And he was reminiscing about, he did a tuk-tuk tour of India. So he drove himself with 2 mates in a tuk-tuk for like 3 weeks. And he was telling the same stories you were saying about the traffic being truly terrifying. And it was
it was a fantastic experience.
Yeah.
Parts of it.
I think that's what I'm after. Experience, ultimately. I don't want to sit on a beach. I mean, I'll have a beach moment. But
I've got friends, I wouldn't say friends, people I know from back home who go to the same resort in Spain.
Yeah, it blows my mind.
With all of their mates. So they basically take their mates from England, take them to Spain, have exactly the same experience as if they were still in England.
Yeah, and
I just can't imagine
or the same iteration of the same holiday. So they go, right, we're going from this hotel with a pool and beach, and we're going, which is in Greece, and then we're going to do it in Spain, or we're going to go and do it in wherever. And it's the same experience. Yes. Whereas I want to taste it all.
Yes.
So, and going back to that point about where James was telling me about the India thing, I was telling him about when I'd bought this old Porsche for 250 quid. I think I told you about this. And with 2 mates from uni, and we drove it around Europe. And we went through France down to Switzerland, into Italy, over to Austria, then Czech Republic, then Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, back home.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and it was... so we recently said, well, how do we do an adventure like this? But now we've got kids that we...
On the trains.
Yeah. Well, the scooters. So we chose to do to 1-day scooter rally last weekend, 2 weeks ago. And we went over to Hokitika, and he'd had it...
Is that the big scooter rally?
Yeah, big scooter rally. And he designed his scooter with the scooter safari that he had in India, and I did mine from the Europe tour, because that was what we talked about originally. That was the I don't know, genesis to the whole idea, and we went and did the ride.
Sponsored as well.
Sponsored, yeah. We were I believe we were the highest earning team ever, and we 22 grand. Yeah, I know. And it was, and we got a little medal and everything.
Yeah, awesome.
Sadly, everyone got COVID.
It's not ideal.
Yeah, came home with some extras. Apart from that, it was an amazing trip.
So India's one place you want to go. Is there anywhere else you think you want to go?
Anywhere I've never been. And I think I've never been to the continent of Africa, so I'd like to definitely do a safari. I'd like to climb Kilimanjaro.
Yeah.
Then anywhere really that I've never been. I would really like to go Philippines. Yeah. I've never been to the Philippines. One of the Asian countries I've not been to. Cambodia. See some of that like local recent history, that terrible like the Pol Pot massacres and things like that, killing fields and all that. It's, as much as it's terrible, I think it gives you a good perspective of life, knowing and hearing some of that stuff.
It just gives you a bit of appreciation as much as anything, doesn't it?
Definitely.
Things can be a lot worse.
Yeah. And also Chengdu in China. I would really love to go mainland China. I've been to Hong Kong and Macau, but never mainland China. And Chengdu looks like the perfect kind of city in my mind. It's got great food. Yeah. It's got that history. Yeah. Weirdly, lots of panda statues, but that's not the big draw. It's not too far from the wall.
It's a big. Yeah, I went to Macau when I was over in the Middle East. My wife's brother lives in Hong Kong.
Nice.
And he invited me over there for a 5-day holiday.
Yep.
So I went and stayed with him, and I had the experience of going to a restaurant in a country where nobody speaks the same language as you, and they ordered the food, and I didn't want to know what it was they were ordering.
Yeah.
But they told me anyway, and I wish they hadn't.
Yeah. And then you're eating jellyfish before you know it, and all sorts of other good stuff.
Goose intestines and various other things.
Delicious.
It was really nice.
Yeah.
But not when I found out what it was.
No, that's the hardest bit. Yeah. I do like trying stuff, but it's knowing what it is quite hard. I didn't knowingly know I ate the dog, by the way. And and when we were in Vietnam, we had the little eggs that had the duck already in them, and and that was hard eating. That was the hardest thing that I've ever actually managed to eat. And I had a bit of a hangover. It's not as good as a KFC, I'll tell you. With a hangover. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to share today that we haven't touched on that you really wanted to say?
I don't know. When you sent through your prompts and stuff, you did say, you had some questions there, maybe you'll ask, and some that you might not. And one of them is, what is an unpopular opinion? Oh, yes. And I did have a think about that. Yeah. And I don't know if it's unpopular as opposed to, I seem to get a lot of backlash when you start talking about it. And it actually feeds into some of the other points that we talked about, which was about like the health and well-being of people, and that one of the best things I've found for any sort of anxiety that I might have or whatever is doing exercise. Yeah. But the unpopular opinion that I get into is what health looks like, and people using weight as a metric. As a healthy metric. I will die in a ditch over this. And there is obviously a spectrum, and if you go over too far into the obesity, of course, weight is or if you go the other way, weight is a problem. Yeah. But in the boundaries of normal thing, you can be a healthy 60 kg person, you can be a healthy 100 kg person, and you actually should be looking at, in my opinion, looking at how you feel, your performance in whatever you're trying to achieve. So if you want to be able to climb a mountain and you can, that's a performance tick. That's health, right? Yeah. That you can do it. Yeah. And the other one is aesthetics and just generally how you feel about yourself, being content. And it upsets me when people go, I just want to lose 10 kg. And I'm like, why do you want to lose 10 kg? Why don't you want to be faster or better at doing something you enjoy?
It does change your focus a bit if you stop focusing on how many kgs you weigh and start focusing on what you want to do. Yeah. Now, one of the things that Chrissy, my wife, and I want to do is do a lot of travelling around in Europe. I want to do a lot of walking. So we need to be
Yeah.
physically able to do that.
Yeah.
So it's not about how much we weigh, but
Exactly.
how far can we walk?
Exactly, and that's the performance measure.
Yeah.
In my mind, you should be focusing on.
Yeah.
Can I walk 20 kilometers? Yes. No. Okay. Well, I work towards that goal, and then that's your tick. That's good.
Yes.
And
I think it's a lot more body positive to do that than it is to say I need to be 80 kilos.
Yeah.
Or whatever it may be.
And I get it. If you're at the high top end of your game, being ultra athletes, that every kg or half a kg matters, that's fine. But when most people aren't, we just want to be happy.
Yeah, if you can look at yourself in the mirror and not be ashamed, then you're doing okay.
Yeah, exactly.
That may be.
My metric is if a friend came to me and asked me to do something with them, but had some physical nature to it. If I said no because I thought I couldn't do it, I'd be disappointed with myself. So I want to be at a standard that I can, to be able to say yes. Back to point A, being able to say yes.
Yeah, I don't know whether that be an unpopular opinion, but it's certainly not
I don't know.
a commonly held opinion, I'd say. Most people do seem to focus on weight loss and weight gain and the rest of it.
I think the unpopular bit is maybe the way I deliver it, and I always say, "No, don't worry about the weight." And they're like, "Well, I am worrying about the weight." Oh, well, anyway.
I mean, you're right. There are things that triggers like diabetes and other things.
Of course, there's obviously outliers.
But if you focus on the goals you want to achieve, it's a different view. I think it's not a bad idea.
Anyway,
Well,
that's my final thought.
Great. Thank you very much, Tom. It's been an interesting conversation, as they always are.
Yeah.
Very pleased you came along to talk to me.
It's been a pleasure, and and I'll just thank you for having the initiative of doing something like this in the town or in the city, and I think it's admirable and enjoyable.
Thank you.
Just adds another bit of interest to the day, right?
Well, you learn a little bit about each other when you're talking, and also just sort of builds a bit more of a relationship, which is always good. So,
agreed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to my podcast, A Penny for Your Thoughts, with me, Steve Penny. I hope you've enjoyed today's conversation, and I look forward to sharing my next conversation with you in the future. Thank you.